Dun 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 da da la da da la. Yeah, okay, we're not going to be doing that anymore. Welcome back to my channel. Hello, I'm so sorry I've been away for a couple of, well, it was about a month now. I've actually, truthfully, been really struggling with art block on a particular painting. I really hate continuing something else when I haven't finished something. And so I've been really struggling to sort of finish this picture and, just get on. So doing this little challenge really helped. Today, however, we are going to be covering the basics of doing a portrait with colouring pencils. So if you're a beginner, this is hopefully going to be very useful. The first thing I recommend having a look at is the colour wheel and looking at colour theory. I have one, and my favourite complementary colours there are blue and orange. They're really useful just for sort of kind of reassuring yourself of which colours really help to make each other pop and stand out. I also am using a Kneadable eraser. Honestly, didn't see the point of these when I first got one, but it has proved to be incredibly useful for just sort of lifting that top layer. And you'll see me using it later on, so definitely try and invest in those if you don't already have them. Now, the theme for today, if you haven't guessed, it's Back to the Future. And we're going to be looking at Lorraine's character played by Leah Thompson in the movie. A couple of things to consider when we are starting a drawing, and one of them is light and shadows. And you can see in this image that she is lit from the back, she's lit from the front, and she's lit from the back on both sides. And this is an interesting thing to consider because it means that we're going to get lots of different shadows, and it's one of the reasons that I really liked this picture. Because having lots of depth of shadows and light helps to create stronger values, and that will make it easier for you to create a shape in your picture. So when you're choosing a picture, what I recommend is choosing one where it has very nice strong values that you can replicate. Now, the colouring pencils that I'm going to be using are ones that I have mentioned before. It's by a brand called I have said before, it's called Brynzeel. But I've since been told that it's more like Brynzeel. Not entirely sure, but we're getting closer. So I think that's what it's called. I absolutely adore this movie, and I've kind of wanted to draw this character for a while. I did say in my 100 Heads challenge, I did something similar where I drew some characters from TV and popular media. And I did say it was really difficult, and I probably shouldn't have attempted it because obviously everyone is familiar with these characters. You have a certain image already in people's minds. So there's very little room for mistakes. But I was super keen, and so I did it. And actually, I'm quite happy. I think there's only very few minor things I would change, but overall, I think it was a good experience. So when we're considering drawing a colouring portrait, we want to look at light and shadows and also building your colours forward. So you can see here that I've put a really base layer of a very light shade of yellow and a light shade of pink, and I'm kind of building that forward. There's a couple of reasons for this. Doing really very light shades obviously means that you're not going to make a mistake by doing a really dark colour and not being able to erase that. So I would definitely recommend doing a light layer. And also you have to consider when you're colouring these, when you're actually putting the colour down, to put very, very, very light pressure from your hand onto the paper to begin with. Because obviously, again, the harder you press in, the the more you're going to damage the paper, the more you're not going to be able to erase any mistakes that you make. A little tip for people who are beginners and perhaps you want to know how to create more interesting pictures. One of the things that a lot of artists use is we build our colors forward in that the background of your painting tends to be lighter than the foreground of your painting or picture. And that's because things that are further away tend to have lots of different atmospheric things in front of them, whether that's mist or, visually, they just become a bit more blurry. So the further away something is, the lighter and more out of focus it is. So when you're doing a picture like this, the same rules can be applied. When you're doing your base color and your hair, you want to create very light colors, and then you want to build the darker colors to the foreground. Eyes, nose, mouth, everything that is predominantly towards the front and is a focal point for your picture is naturally going to be in slightly darker colors. And this is really useful. So you should generally apply your darkest colors last. We also want to consider things like your color palette, which again comes back down to color theory. It might be useful for some of you, if you truly are beginners, to just choose a couple of colors, not the whole bunch, because it will help you kind of narrow your no, I don't want to say your options of messing up, but like it will mean that you will practice more with using the shades and pressure from your hand than it will by trying to substitute those with different colors. So for example, if you're trying to create a shadow like the one I've done over her eye here, rather than using a very dark purple or a very dark black, you can practice creating shadows with just applying more pressure from your coloring pencil, and you'll kind of become more attuned to that if you use less. So maybe just narrow yourself down to kind of, in this picture I only used really purples, oranges, yellows and blues, which are all complementary colors of each other generally, and they're all in the same sort of little bracket. You should also consider how to hold your pencil. So you can probably tell from my video that generally I am using the coloring pencil from the side of the pencil. I'm not using it from the tip and straight down. Obviously, this is more likely to create marks that I can't get rid of and damage the paper, basically. And no one wants to do that. I also generally use circular motions when I'm putting down a layer, and that is to give it a really nice smooth effect. There is also a technique, you've probably heard of it, called hatching. Again, this is really useful. If you want to create a really smooth layer and you feel like you're not covering the paper, don't go harder into the paper doing the same movements with your hand. Say you put down one layer, and just imagine now that you're doing a line and it's vertical. So you're doing several lines and they're vertical. Now, if you want to make that a little bit darker and a smoother, do the same pressure from your hand over the top horizontally. And what you're going to do is just create a much smoother layer, but not necessarily creating the very harsh indentations in your paper. Thank you, by the way. I just want to shout out to, on my last video, someone commented saying, "Hey, I'm your 103rd subscriber." And it was so sweet. And since then, I've had, I think, 70 more subscribers. And that's been in the space of a month. So thank you so much if you have been one of those subscribers. Genuinely, I find it very touching. I know it doesn't necessarily sound like a lot to some people when you compare it to these very big artists and they have millions of subscribers. But, I've worked at a bar. If I were working at the bar and 70 people walked in, I'd be thinking, oh shit. No. I'd be like, got to make so many beers now. So it genuinely, I appreciate that that is a lot more people than it sounds just to say it out loud. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you'll find it useful, some of the tips that I've explained. This is purely for beginners, so maybe I might do a more intense one in the future. I do have a couple of videos lined up. They're just going to take me a little while to edit, but hopefully we're back on track. So my next video will hopefully be again in a couple of weeks' time. This time we're aiming for a Friday. I really want to start publishing on a Friday. But I think I've got a much better system in place now to make sure that happens. So we'll see. And also Inktober is just around the corner, and I could not be more excited to do that. So I'll also be sharing some Inktober videos with you in the future. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you'll join me on my next video. It's been great, and thank you all so much. See you around, everyone. Bye.